Oh, wow. That thing is pretty too. That's like, oh, it's like carbon fibery.
That's the one that Amir loved on ASR. He went crazy for that headphone.
Like, objectively or subjectively?
Both. That's what was so funny, because objectively apparently it's so good and has a super low distortion and all his synad and all that kind of stuff. But then at the very end, he kind of had his little subjective jab that he likes to do, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and yeah, and he was and in his video too, he kept saying wow, 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 and all these subjective terms. And I even wrote, I wrote on the thread. I was like, why do you do this? Because he said Andrew's review on Headphone Show were so like cringe inducing
Mm.
because they're so subjective. But I'm like, why do you do the same thing, right? What's the and then he didn't really have an answer.
Mm. Okay. Now, I've watched a few of Amir's videos. Obviously the objective stuff is his forte. I've read probably more of his blog style on his subjective stuff, and I can't really get like a read on what he actually likes subjectively. Like it's quite hard to compare his subjective impressions across products because they don't seem to really like they make no sense to me. But
Right.
anyway. Some people you get a bit of a read on. You're like, oh, you like a slight tilt here, and these are the things you value. But with Amir, I got no idea. I got no idea.
Yeah, it's not subjectivity is to me is a fundamental part of audio, and if all you do is objective analysis, then I think you're missing a huge piece of what it's all about.
Oh yeah, and like I've said it a million times. Like objectively, there's so many things that we can't measure in audio that there is no tool to tell us between two products whether soundstage. Like we're still trying to understand how some things sound wider and deeper and taller than other products. DAX, particularly digitally, we like this is the same thing, like we get the same output. How is this different? And there's no way to just, oh yeah, we can compare A and B, we know this number is different, therefore this one's going to be better or this one's going to be worse. Can't do it. So it's subjective. But I just wish we all spoke the same subjective language. It's like you read
Right.
stuff from people like Darko, and he just like made up his own audio language that he likes, and it makes like it just no way to correlate it against other things.
I
Darko's a
remember
good
I
one.
remember one time he called something chewy sounding.
Too recent. I remember that one too, and I was like, what does that mean? But I really hate vague audio terms, and they get thrown around a lot. Like, I really like when Marv smashed the word transparent, because I always hate transparent. I'm like, what is transparent? Like, if you break it
Right.
down, like, what does that word actually mean? And it means a different thing to every audio file. But Marv went beyond that and sort of used that transparent was almost like it was like an overused excuse word type thing. But I loved his definition of it. I'll try to find it for you. Like, and it
And before we start the show, Zach, if you could just go over your thoughts on the OG Empyrean again one more time, because I just wanted to capture that. That was good.
The OG Imperial. I forgot what I said already. The Fashion Fi headphone.
Yeah, yeah. What
Um,
were your thoughts?
I heard it a few years ago when it first came out at a show, and the guy just gave it to me, and I had like a plethora of amps and DACs. I had like Dave and M scaler and like all this stuff in front of me. It's such a beautiful headphone, and I thought, oh, I had high hopes because I'd heard a bit about it. But anyway, I had a listen, and I found it was sort of really big on like the macro sort of stuff. Like macro was pushed forward a little bit, mids were upped a little bit, but just like the technicalities just weren't there. Like it just
Right.
the bass was deep, but again it wasn't as textured and layered. it was a little bit emphasized. It was a bit of a mid-bass bump, but again, it was just for me. It was pretty unremarkable. But it's what I call like fashion fi, where it
Right.
looks good, performs well to a big chunk of the market, which use particular music and gear that I think likes that macro emphasis, but don't really care too much about the real technicality and detail that these things are doing. And,
Right.
I'd compare them to like the fine audio speakers, the smaller ones that I heard recently. I think I talked about them on the last show, but they're, again, huge macro, really good with like female vocals and stuff like that. But there was just like when you really started to try and like the nuances between, I don't know, timbral changes and like transients and stuff, like the performance just wasn't that high end in the end. So
Right.
I don't know. Fashion fire, I think it's definitely a thing. It's there's definitely a place for it in the market, and I respect it. But yeah, it's yeah, not my jam.
Yeah, I like that term. It's a nice term. I definitely appreciate the design and the build of the Empyrean. Like it's
It's
beautiful.
gorgeous.
It's beautiful to look at. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think a lot of people do feel that way. I know there's definitely a kind of a diehard crowd that loves the sound of the Empyrean. But I yeah, it makes total sense. If you could marry the design and the aesthetics with top of the line sound, then that would be amazing. Um,
So true.
so
One
yeah,
day, one day we'll
one
one day we'll have a Goldilocks headphone that
yeah,
makes 95% of us drool and won't break our banks.
yes. Yeah, I think that will happen eventually. Okay, so let's get started. I invited everybody, so if they trickle in later, that's fine. We're streaming on YouTube as well. I posted the YouTube link. Stream looks good. So yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Sonic Visions podcast. We have some kind of regular guests. Zach, who we were talking to. How's it going, Zach?
Yeah, good mate, good mate. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Of course, the notorious one. Are you there, man?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Good, awesome. And then we have a new guest, and if you don't mind, kind of just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how about you and how you got into hi-fi. Silverish, yeah, how's it going?
Oh, great. And how I got into hi-fi. Uh made the mistake of watching Zeos 3 years ago. um Bought cheap stuff, bought more expensive stuff, made more friends. They influenced me to buy more expensive things, and I've ended up with a collection of stuff that just sounds great. And I ended up in here as well. I don't know, the details would just take too long, but I think that's a good summary. I went through the basic hierarchy, I think, just buying nicer and nicer things.
What was the first thing you bought that kind of set you on a path? Because a lot of us, I think, had one experience that made us go, "Hey, I think this is a path I wanna go down."
Oddly, really early on, I got a almost, I don't wanna say as a joke, but maybe to surprise a friend of mine, I bought because I had a lot of extra money, I bought the HE1000, and, that set me on a path buying amps and DACs because that didn't sound right on the little, $200 shit stack, you know? So, that was an interesting way to set me on a path, but it definitely did, and I'm still on that path, I think.
So did you the first piece of like high end, well, not even high end, the first decent headphone you went from like Apple EarPods to HE1. Is that what you're telling it? To HE1000?
No. The first hi-fi headphone was probably the HE400i, but
Ah,
QC issues had me returning that immediately,
hmm. That
and that
didn't
kind of
deter you from Hi-Fi Man though, which is good because I think
it
they've improved their quality control so much in the last 3-4 years.
it did for a little bit, I'll admit, but, going into the used market, I think, helped because then the item at least isn't bad from the factory.
Yeah.
And do you still have the HE1000?
Yeah, actually, I still have it, you know, it's great. I can't think of a reason to get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. It has every headphone has flaws, but I've any flaws it does have don't seem to bother me.
Nice. Sounds good. So, what gear are you guys currently enjoying, enjoying now, looking forward to? Silverish, why don't we just continue with you? So you mentioned about HE1000. Is there anything else that you're really enjoying right now, or you're looking forward to?
I've been just getting into powerful and just good tube amps. I'm using a tube speaker amp right now, but I'm looking more and more at tube headphone amps. But for an HE1000, it can't just be a basic little OTL. It's got to be something with an output transformer, and those just aren't cheap.
No.
Yeah. You're looking for a tube headphone amp for the HE1000?
Potentially. I know of a amp from the same company that makes my speaker amp that may be coming out next year, but who knows? They've been talking it up for years.
Which company is it?
Oh, Carver. Carver.
Oh,
yeah.
Carver.
Nice.
Carver
Right.
Corp.
Cool.
They've been planning a headphone amp for a while, and it seems interesting actually.
Nice. That sounds good. And then, Zekitor, what about you?
I'm pretty excited because I'm going to a meet tomorrow morning to a dealer who's sort of turning into a bit of a friend. He has ATCs and the Mola gear, the Tambaqu and whatever the Makua. I don't know. There's like these crazy. I don't know, they're Hawaiian names. I don't know. I think so. So I'm going to his place, but I'm dragging all of my gear to his place. So I'm taking my headphone amplifier, which is a Eddy Current Studio. It's 2 massive boxes. I'm taking my Rockner DAC. I'm taking my CD transport, and I'm gonna go and compare the Mola DAC directly to my Rockner because I want to know if the Mola is okay or not. Basically, I want to get an idea of what it sounds like a bit better. He also has ATC 100 speakers, so I can sort of hear the difference between the Rockner and the Mola on speakers, which is going to be fun. And yeah, just going to go do a lot of audio nerding tomorrow morning. So I'm really psyched for that, to do some listening with he doesn't have any headphone experience really, this guy, so it'll be fun to take good gear down and show him, that headphones can be a decent alternative to speakers if you're in an apartment or something like that, because he's never pursued any sort of headphone or been forced into like the headphone corner like a lot of us did initially, if we don't have the space or the funds to do speakers and have a good room. But he's got 3 beautiful rooms there as well, with ATC, Fine, and another brand, I'm not quite sure what that one is, but yeah, he's got some fantastic gear, so really excited to go and listen tomorrow. Hello.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think you just cut out there for a second. So that sounds awesome. Yeah, the Mola gear is well regarded, so it'll be interesting how that compares. You have the Balance Signature Rockna?
Yeah. I have
Okay,
the
nice.
flagship one, I think, at the moment.
That's awesome. And then man, what about you?
Yeah, I've just been listening to speakers. As you know, I prefer low volume listening, and I haven't been feeling well for the past few days, so I've been using speakers because headphones and IEMs are a bit uncomfortable at the moment. And I really do love listening at low volumes. I believe there's something to be said there because you can enjoy, the dynamics. You can still, enjoy the song, and your physicality won't be as strong if you turn the volume up. But it's very relaxing. It's just very pleasing. So I've been doing that for a little bit, kind of like ambient listening, and that's been a lot of fun. Uh, in terms of gear, that's I'm looking forward to. Finally, my Elysian X has been handed over to DHL, so I should be getting that in next week, and I should be getting the BGGAR Melee by next week. So next episode, I should have a lot of things to say about those 2 IEMs. I've been waiting for the Elysian X for over 2 months now, so I am quite excited to get my hands on it, and I'll be listening to it on the gear that he designed it on, which was the DMP-Z1, and then also be comparing it on the M30, on the Shenling M30 as well. So the Elysian X will have zero excuses to be performing at its best. So it's going to be a fun week next week. But right now, that's really about it.
Nice.
Awesome. Sounds good. You kind of reminded me about something I was thinking about today. I was listening to my near field, my ETCs, SCM7s, with my dual subs, and I was kind of I was just trying to do some work, and today's an off day for me, so and it's in the daytime, so I don't have to use my headphones. And I mean, it sounded great. I really enjoyed it, but the one thing I'm finding, I don't know why, but I'm finding a little bit more fatigue, or I don't know, intensity from the speakers. I guess I don't know if it's the punchiness or the fact that I turn them up a little bit louder, but it makes it sometimes a bit harder to kind of work and focus, and I kind of get fatigued a bit. And then when I go back to headphones, I say, yeah, this sounds more relaxed. I'm not, fatigued. I can focus better. I can work better. So I don't know if it's the punchy quality, or if it's the how expansive the sound is, or how the details are all over the place. Like there's the spatial staging that are not as prevalent on headphones. I don't know what it is, but then I said, yeah, you know what? I want to kind of go to the headphones for some time, and I can kind of focus a bit better on work and not get this kind of strange fatigue sensation. I don't know if it's also the ATCs are a bit more neutral than my headphones. My headphones in general are darker, especially with the tube amps. So it's a weird phenomenon that I have to kind of explore more, because in general, for immersive listening, I greatly prefer speakers. But then when it comes to kind of being productive and while enjoying music, I mean, there's something to be said for headphones, like not being so intrusive, I guess.
For sure. Like the even the isolation on an open headphone, I think it just helps you focus a little bit more sometimes. So I don't know. I agree with that one. Sometimes for me, I do put headphones on for background music and stuff. The isolation seems to help me focus. So yeah, I can definitely see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But okay, cool. That sounds great. What about music you've been listening to recently in the past week or so? Either kind of some favorites or some new artists or albums that you like and maybe recommend. Anybody? Any kind of new music?
Do you want to say something, Smod? Because I haven't actually heard much of what you've been listening to, so it'd be good to hear from you for once.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I've been all over the map. I've been, classical, jazz. Usually, what I do is I have Rune with Emerald title, and I just go into a playlist, like my classical playlist or jazz playlist, and I just hit shuffle and I just let it go. But yeah, sometimes I like to do the Rune Radio to find kind of new music and explore that. And so I've been doing a lot of lately. Like chill hop or jazz hop kind of music. I really enjoy that stuff, and especially for working, but even just for enjoying. I just like the style of that music, especially without vocals. When the vocals get in there or there's some rap in there, I hate it. But without vocals and just listening to the instrumental aspects of jazz hop, I really like it. So there's a couple artists that I came across recently. One is called Emerald, Emerld, and I was listening to this album Relics, and that was really good. And then I mean, that's one of the new ones, and then one of the I mean, there's so many, but one of the classic ones, I would say probably my favorite of all time is Mr. Honk, just Mr. and then Hong, and I just love his jazz hop or chill hop. It's just incredible. So it's a cool genre. I gotta explore more. I have to learn more about it. I'm kind of new to it. But yeah, that's what I've been listening to. What about you, Zach?
I'm just trying to find. Did you say Mr. Hong?
Yeah, Mr. Hong.
Hong.
Hong and then mr.hong. If you search for that, yeah,
Yep.
he's incredible. He's
Yeah,
amazing.
Adding these to my because I got to do a lot of driving to do this audio meet, so I'm like, right, great. Smod's giving me albums to listen to. And the other one was Emerald.
Emerald
And
Emerld, and this album is Relics, Relics. But yeah, Emerald is a new one I just found. But yeah, if you want my number one favorite is Mr. Hong. Like I haven't found anybody that's even close to him for my preferences in terms of he has really high mastering quality. That's the other thing with a lot of chill hop or jazz hop. I find the mastering is not the best. His mastering is amazing, and
Really clean.
he tastefully uses kind of, quote unquote, like lo-fi / radio kind of sounds in a very tasteful way. It's not just all over the place, and then you get that nice contrast between hi-fi sound, lo-fi sound, the different kind of rhythms, and it's relaxing, and it's you'll see when you listen to him. It's really cool.
Nice, man. No, yeah, I've been listening to a bit of this, bit of that lately. Young the Giant is a good artist that I've sort of been revisiting. It's kind of like a rocky poppy band, but they have some really, I don't know, just innovative bits of music. Actually, I find them to be innovators in the space a little bit, and I enjoy some of the play that they do. Even the videos, like the videography that they've done, really sinks in well with their music, and I actually like the visuals quite a lot too. Like when I don't like to use YouTube to listen to music because it's obviously not the highest quality, but I really enjoy some of the film clips because there's so much artistry going on there as well.
Right.
What else? Flicking through what I've been listening to. A bit of Winona Oak, Elfie Templeman, Coda, Tamer. A lot of like indie-fi, the indie pop stuff. It's not super hi-fi stuff. Bit of Frank Ocean lately, Grimes, a little bit. Yeah. Some classical. I seem to go through little bits of classical music, but I think we might talk about classical later on in the show, so I don't want to give away all my classical faves just yet.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, I haven't heard of any of these people, but I'm not really exposed to those genres, so that's cool. I'll definitely kind of look into that a bit more. But yeah, awesome. And then Ko, what about you? What have you been listening to?
Yeah, so I won't be able to provide artists for you guys. I've been looking into binaural soundscape recordings on YouTube, atmospheric recordings. So I sort of been missing out on what society used to be before, all of this nonsense of the pandemic. So I went on YouTube and I looked at, this guy took binaural mics, and this was a video The Verge actually published it some time ago. And he took binaural mics and he just recorded what New York streets were with the hustle and bustle. And and then this sort of led me through a rabbit hole of videos where there are some people who take these binaural microphones, or I think it's 360 microphones, and they walk through the streets of Japan like on a rainy day. So I've been playing that through my speakers, and it's been very relaxing and very therapeutic. So this sort of like a left turn from all this music you guys have been talking about, but it's quite it's quite relaxing, and I find it quite nourishing.
Nice.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that stuff. That binaural stuff. It's really
Did SMod lose connection?
Can't wait till VR really gets to that level as well, and they can use the binaural recordings and VR all sync together. I know they've done a little bit, but when this becomes more mainstream, because the amount of immersion, Heiko, if you have good audio, good visual, and that level of recording, the level of immersion, your brain is actually tricked to think you're there very quickly. It's amazing.
I have resisted using any form of VR, so I'm just going to wait until it really hits a good point, then I'll have my first experience with that.
Oh, yeah. Even though the video and like the speed, the frame rate and stuff isn't quite there, yeah, I'm in agreement. I haven't invested in it yet until it gets to a point when it's at like a threshold point where it just becomes universally used, then I'll pick it up too. But I'm really excited for how that technology is going to work, particularly with binaural recordings and audiophile sort of IEMs and stuff. It's going to be next level.
Absolutely, it's going to be fun. We got a fun future ahead.
Yeah, even the current stuff. I mean, I have a Quest 2, and yeah, I think I know where you're going with this, Zach, in terms of the fidelity that you're looking for. And yeah, I think what you're thinking about, yeah, we're not at that level yet, but I'm blown away by Quest 2, and also the not having wires, and then they do have a headphone jack, so you can get some decent IEMs to improve the sound quality, and it's amazing. But there's a headphone, sorry, not headphone, a VR headset made by a company called Vario. It's called the Vario VR3, and it's more for commercial use. But if you take a look at that, the resolution and clarity in that one, based on like I've seen videos of like through the lens videos that are done by this guy called or his channel is called MRTV, but
Mm.
like that, it's like basically very close to monitor level, like it's really up there. And but now the issue is that that's more commercial, it's expensive. I think
Mm.
it costs like 5K or something like that. They don't sell to consumers, but that, I mean, that's the a kind of preview of the technology that's going to come out. Unfortunately, it's not wireless like the Quest 2. I find that having a wireless solution makes such a huge difference for the immersion and the sense of freedom in VR.
Mm.
But yeah, it's very exciting.
It'll also, I think, be good with the pandemic and stuff when this technology starts to really catch up, because having virtual offices and stuff with
Yeah.
using augmented reality, having your desk at home actually have someone left and right of you that you can interact with if you
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
That's going to remove this disconnect we seem to have. It's just better to see and be able to talk to someone in real time. And even if it's virtual, I think it'll help a lot of people who are struggling, with the pandemic and not having people around them, especially for highly extroverted people who need people, or else they get depressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, welcome. What music have you been listening to lately?
Actually, Nick, if you don't mind me asking, you guys okay after Ida?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I think he
Yeah.
might not be. Maybe he's trying to talk and it's not coming through. Um, so okay, let's move on for now. Oh, and Silverish, sorry, we didn't touch on you. I think I got thrown off because Nick came in and I was like looking at 4 blocks.
Yeah.
So Silverish, yeah, what have you been listening to?
I've actually got it pulled up here because you guys were talking about music, and it's an. I recently got recommended an Argentinian folk rock band called Sui Generis, which is I love it. The
Can you spell that?
Yes, SUI and then GENERIS.
Yep, thank you.
Their album from '91. I don't know if I can pronounce that, but it
No, I can't.
starts with the
You
word
can.
PEQUE.
Yep, I see it.
Uh, Fantastic album. Just completely different, and the album goes up and down. I mean, completely different tone from the beginning to the end. But that really caught me off guard, and um, it's important that we find music we enjoy, and that just caught me off guard. I just sat there, just lost in the music, didn't care what I was listening with. So it didn't matter. I don't understand the language either. It's just great stuff.
Hmm.
I also got recommended another band. I'm trying to find it. Someone recommended me Nickel Creek. Never heard them before either. They sounded kind of folky as well.
Nice.
Whenever I get thrown something that's very folk or um, anything with a lot of acoustic instruments that doesn't necessarily sound slow or one instrument, uh, I really like that when you get a lot of mix of that without having you don't necessarily have to make it sound electronic, but you can still have a lot going on.
All right, cool. Sounds good. So the first kind of piece of news to discuss is Rocky Mountain Audio Fest is closing down. and not just this show, but all future shows. I don't know if any of you have gone to it or have thoughts on it or any kind of direct or indirect experience regarding Rocky Mountain, but what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I booked tickets for this show, intending it to be my first show. That's kind of a fun coincidence. I know that I was planning on meeting a few folks there if my schedule was aligning. But yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing, like, I was asking a few dealers if they're going to go, and it's funny because all of them sort of said no. And I was just curious, and I asked them, "Is there any reason like you're concerned about COVID?" And they said they said it was very odd because some of their own partners pulled out, and with them pulling out, they didn't see the reason to go. So I suspect that behind the scenes, I think just a lot of vendors may have pulled out last minute because I think this probably happened 2 weeks ago because I was in contact with Marjorie about some snafu with my tickets. And I asked, "Is this still happening?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely, 100%." And this was about about 3-ish weeks ago, yeah, about 3 weeks ago. And then I heard back from my dealer about 2 weeks ago that he won't be going, and a few other people pulled out. So I think that, yeah, and I think what's really troubling is that it's not going forward. So now you've got less
Right.
opportunities for people who want to get exposed to the audio community and just have fun with it and learn different things. And now what have you got left now? You got Expona. I'm not too sure if Expona is happening next year. But yeah, what I'm curious though, when I got that email, I'm just curious, what's going to take its place? What does the future of this mean? Does this mean that a lot of the meetups will be decentralized? So you get a lot of these, like, okay, not swap meets, but these local small little meetups that like Zach is going to, or that like one that was done like a couple weeks ago or last week. Like, is this the future now, or like massive meetups not going to happen because of continual COVID? I'm just curious.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not good in my opinion. I think that the smaller meetups are great because then obviously it's more personal. You kind of know what's gonna be brought to the meetup, and I guess it would be, presumably more about the kind of friendly interaction, and everything would be idea like probably more relaxed than more of a big meet, which is more kind of tense, and maybe the show conditions and everything's noisy. But I still think that those things do those big meetups are great for exposure to people who maybe don't even know what what we're doing here with as audiophiles, and also just the diversity of gear. Like obviously, there's going to be a huge amount of gear at a big show versus a small meetup. So I think that it sucks. It's too bad. Maybe they'll change their mind in the future, depending on how things go with COVID. But I wish it didn't happen. Okay. So the next topic is about this a specific new headphone release, and that's from Meze Audio, and that's the Empyrean Elite, their kind of successor to their prior flagship Empyrean headphone, well known in hi-fi audiophile headphone circles. And I don't know if anybody here has heard it. I'm assuming no. But any thoughts on maybe indirect thoughts or what you've read about it, or any kind
Yeah,
of comments on it?
I do have a few comments. So what I found was interesting was when I looked at the press release, and they talked about the design and the machining of the aluminum. It reminded me very strongly of the IE 900, about how they sort of had these micro grooves inside the metal in the chassis of the IAM, and they did a similar thing with Elite. So
Right.
just thought it was a fun coincidence that both companies shared that sort of approach on manufacturing or using aluminum in their product. I think anything else? Yeah, I think we know a couple people in the server that heard it, and the impressions wasn't overly favorable. But I'm not a fan of speculating. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have any further thoughts. I mean, what's the big change here? They got new pads and a new driver. and a new chassis, but the tuning's about the same. Yeah, that's about it as far as I'm concerned.
I heard I heard that the tuning is totally different, and I think PC Chip in our Discord actually he bought it, and he actually felt that it sounded like a completely different headphone compared to the OG Empyrean, and I would be really curious to know what Zach thinks about it, or like assuming he heard it, what his kind of response would be to it, because he didn't like you didn't like the OG one, Zach, and apparently this one is more resolving, more detailed, faster. And of course PC Chip will correct me in the text if I'm wrong in saying those things, but that seems to be the result. Maybe a little bit less bass and a little bit less kind of richness, and maybe not as fun sounding, but it's more of that detail and resolution that I think you're a lover of detail, right?
Yeah, so I should be hearing it in about 2 weeks or so. I think the dealer said he's getting the Dan Clark Audio Stealth in the Elite, and he just sold his Hollow May, and that's what I wanted to go and hear because I keep hearing people talk about the Hollow May, and I was like, well, I've never heard this thing, so I should probably add that to my list of tried gear, just so I have the reference to know what other people are talking about. But I will definitely be posting in the text channel and probably posting a review on SBAF after that meet, which is hopefully, like I said, about 2 weeks away. Just waiting on him to get his stuff in stock.
Nice. So it would be nice to kind of hear your thoughts. I just want to say that I think it looks amazing. I know we were talking about the Fashion Fi thing, and I think they're just really leaning into that. It looks amazing, and I like the colors, and I love the design. I heard the original, and to me, I liked it. I thought that it had a very fun, kind of rich sound. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Atticus. So I think it is an interesting headphone. But I heard it on 2 occasions next to the LCD XC, the new one, and also next to the Abyss Diana Phi. And on both occasions, when you do the switch, you get shocked at the increase in detail of the other headphone and the resolution and clarity, and you're like, wow, like this is way more open and spacious and resolving. But I mean, I only heard it for a small amount of time and compared it for a small amount of time, so or short amount of time, I should say. So, if you live with it, I guess it can grow on you, and that's the sentiment of those who love the original Empyrean, I guess.
Well, I had the original Empyrean, and then I got the HD Zeus per Chip's recommendation. And I will say that the HD Zeus gets so close to the Empyrean that, I mean, I just sold the Empyrean like 2 weeks after getting the Zeus. So this Elite really has to really stand out, because not only did the original Empyrean get bested by a cheap Chinese headphone, which happens to be excellent, but this Elite is now commanding a lot higher price. So they sort of have to make up for that, because I think Zach brought up something about Fashion Fi earlier, and Empyrean to a degree is that. You're not paying for sound quality alone. You're paying for that ridiculously good build. So I think with Elite, they have to further justify the sound quality, and I'm not doubtful, but I'm mildly curious. I think that I mean between Dan Clark's Stealth and Meze, I think Dan Clark's Stealth would probably be a bit more technical, be a bit more impressive to someone who wants something that's a tad more resolving. Because if you look at Meze's house sound, I just wonder how you're going to get that highly, how you're going to get closer to something that's very technical but still retain that enjoyable sound. And that's a really tricky balance that I think Zeus Far, to my experience, really achieved.
I don't know if Stealth's even going to hold a candle to something like Sasvara, because it's closed, and it's just a technical nightmare to deal with the reflections inside there. So you can get a good result, but to get something that's a technical marvel in a closed can has never been done before, basically. In my opinion, I don't think there's a closed can that's actually an amazing product. You know, they're good, they're great for closed. We always have to add that at the end. You know, it's good for a closed headphone, but you'd probably still take the Zeus over pretty much any of the current on market closed headphones.
I don't know.
So
I would say the Verite Close is the best headphone I've heard in a long time.
it still had limitations for me. The
Yeah,
Verity
yeah,
Closed.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think Zach. One thing about closed headphones, especially ZMFs, is I think there's a tendency for them to be more fun sounding, right? Like the bass is a little bit more impactful, and maybe you get a little bit of that cup reverb, and so it sounds a little bit kind of romantic and more interesting. And yeah, I mean, it seems like a big consensus is that people enjoy the Verite closed over the Verite open. So and I mean it's not a fair comparison, but I mean I had the Atticus and O'Toole. Now they're different drivers, so it's not like comparing apples to apples. But I vastly enjoyed the Atticus more. Now the real comparison would be Atticus versus Icon. But yeah, I mean I think there's something to closed that gives it an edge over open sometimes in terms of that fun factor and that engagement.
It's mid bass. What you're talking about is bass. Is that closed cans can get a higher SPL because you can actually generate some pressure. So it's easier for them to generate some mid bass and even to go lower on the extension. So I think a lot of people are drawn to that, but I'm just all about that clean mid range, that sweetness in the mid range, and that's where I think closed cans downfall usually is in the upper treble response and even in the lower mid detail. Like they lose it because they've got upper mid. They got that mid bass that tends to over attenuate and then calm the lower mids. So you end up with a bit of lower mid suck out, and some people adore that sound. The lower mid suck out is a tuning we've seen in the OG Abyss. We've seen it in a number of high end headphones, and it's really popular tuning for a lot of people. So I don't know. It's all about what you like, right? Like, so I think if you like some of that tuning, yeah, definitely closed cans can be end game, but if you're someone who appreciates really clean treble response, then I feel like there's just open headphones and closed headphones. There's just no comparison still for me. And I've heard the Verity closed, and I've heard the XCs, and just the HD820, but we'll not even talk about that because that's not fair to put that headphone in the same sentence, But
have you heard the Verite Open?
I've heard the Verity Open. I've heard the latest range of ZMF headphones, and they are so much better than like the days when the Icon and stuff were around. I think the newer range that come out since Icon I like a lot better, but I do find them to be just like very very colored and flavored in different ways. They're kind of I don't know. I chase some sort of reference sound, which I think a lot of people don't like, which probably tilts on brighter and leaner sounding, which is probably my preference, and a lot of people don't like that. I totally understand that, but yeah, my preference is kind of more on slightly bright, and I don't mean like a lot bright, like I just mean a tilt off neutral.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, and now in the era of streaming, in the era of Tidal and Qobuz and all these the era of convenience and just hitting a button, hitting play, and sitting back and relaxing with a tablet, like that in that kind of era, what's the value of physical media? Like, are you guys still using physical media? What are the advantages of it? What are your thoughts on physical media in an era of streaming?
Well, I use physical media for music that I really adore and respect. And if it comes with, great artwork and that sort of thing. So I view it as a collectible, not as a practical medium. Now, granted, there are some exceptions. There are some great SACD recordings, which are only available in SACD and are only available in Japan, for instance. And so I sort of have to get those. But outside of specialized imported recordings, I just use physical media really as a homage to the music that I really love. So, for instance, there's with Gorillaz, for instance, I love that band a lot, and I do own a vinyl Gorillas, the fall, not the fall, Demon Days, and I own that. I don't even have a vinyl player. I don't plan on getting a vinyl player, but I have it because I like the band, and it's a really nice, it's a nice collectible, and that's just my perspective.
Interesting. And what about you, Silverish and Zach? Any thoughts on physical media? Do you guys use physical media or not really?
On and off for myself. I think vinyl, and when in the right mood, especially on speakers, vinyl can sound really good. It does have a bit of its own. It sounds different. You're not going through a DAC, and sometimes there's benefits from that. Maybe a little less harsh, but a lot of the time it can be in the way. It can be annoying to have to set it up and manually, turn over the record when it's done playing and get everything calibrated and working right. Because that does require maintenance and setup.
Right.
Yeah, it's a labor of love, isn't it?
Yeah.
Zach, what about you?
I'm gonna be that guy who does still use quite a lot of physical media, and not just as an homage, as Ko's sort of using it, or as a collectible. I agree with him though in that I own some vinyl. I don't even have a vinyl record player at the moment, but I do still buy some vinyl, particularly from artists I really adore, because I want to support them and make sure that they're actually getting paid directly for their efforts. So I think buying physical media is good, but I actually still prefer CD over streamers. I've tried a number of streamers, a couple of DAPs in my system, and I enjoy streamers for finding new music, especially the PC algorithms that they have. You can put in 3 songs and it spits out a radio of songs that might fit your preferences. I think that's fantastic. But when I really want to critically listen and I want to make sure that there's no PC and 100 microchips and a GPU and everything that might potentially color the sound in the way, I prefer to spin CDs. I just find it's the simplest way to get really high quality digital sound. As a transport mechanism, and I enjoy spinning the CDs because it forces me to sort of enjoy the whole album. I know I can flick through the tracks, but I find that I don't give an artist half a chance. I kind of listen to the single and then move on to the next artist. So I think sometimes albums are designed to be listened to front to back, and vinyl and CD kind of force you to experience the whole album as it was intended by the artist. So I enjoy that aspect of it too. But yeah, huge proponent of CDs and still use them.
Are you planning on getting a record player?
I probably will get a record player one day, but I'm sort of same as Silverish in that I know I've heard a lot of vinyl, and vinyl to me, I would say that 95% of the vinyl systems I've heard at home, and that would be probably close to 100, sucked. They were just outright terrible. Like, I guess because I'm 31 and I was raised in the digital world. Like, if the noise floor's high and the records are poorly kept and are old and dusty, and there's tons of pops and crackles and hiss, I can't actually focus on the music. I'm too annoyed by like all the other stuff that's going. And some people are like, oh, it's atmospheric. I'm like, well, if there was a fireplace in the room, it might be atmospheric. But not when I'm trying to when the noise floor is so high that, there's it's gone beyond gray ground. It's like literally like hissing at freaking 50 dB. Like, so I would like to get into vinyl, but I know that I'm probably not the person to do it. It is something that you need to keep your records in pristine condition. The actual system itself needs amazing synergy to get all of the components, the arm, the cartridge, everything down to what you use to put pressure onto the vinyl to press it into the mat. What kind of mat you use. Like, I can just see myself going down a rabbit hole, and people have seen me go down the rabbit hole on digital and nearly bankrupt me and my partner. So vinyl would be another dangerous thing for me to take up. I'm interested in it though, because I said 95% sucked, but 5% made me go, oh, I see. I see that it is possible. The enlightenment is there. So I do definitely think that vinyl is an incredible medium, but it's just so rarely done. And most of the time it's done as an homage, or we like to spin records because it's fun to see, because people have like a horology interest or something. But to actually get high fidelity from vinyl, I would say is done extremely rarely. I've never heard it really at a show be done at the level that I've heard at those couple of homes where they've nailed it. But it is definitely possible. But I don't know if I'll do it because I'm too scared. That's that.
Zach, you just need a degritter, man. You gotta just degrit that stuff. That's all you need.
You get the degritter and the anti-static, and I'll have to like dehumidify the whole room all the time, and I'll have to get the acrylic case to go over the top so that dust doesn't fall on the records while they're spinning. Have to put the whole thing on. I have to get one of those microscope stabilizing things, microscope pads. I have a custom one built that I can put under the table so it doesn't move in any. Well, it can move in any dimension, but it won't upset the tone arm and the cartridge.
Or you need one of those levitating ones that float in the air.
Oh, we'll just bang on some like 200-kilo magnets, to just keep the whole system suspended in the air a couple of feet off the ground. I've never seen that done, but now I want to see that done. Like, I've seen that levitating bed that they've made, right? With the giant, it's got like a giant piece of steel underneath it, and then they've put a big magnet, and it just hovers like 1 foot off the ground. Like, surely someone's thought about doing this with vinyl.
Parker is an engineer and one of our well-known members. And if you want to piss Parker off royally, just send him a video of that levitating turntable, and he'll get super pissed off.
Is it a thing?
Yeah, it's real.
Oh, I have to see this. Okay. I didn't know it was actually a thing.
It was actually at the last Expona, which was in 2019, sadly.
Yeah, he rages hard. Anyways, okay. So,
amazing. Okay.
I'll just say about me very quickly. I totally appreciate all you guys and people who love physical media. I totally get it. The idea of having it kind of reminds me a little bit of physical books too. And versus like having a digital reader or a Kobo or whatever Amazon reader. So I totally get that. I get that aspect of it. When I watch Steve Guttenberg's videos and I look in the background, I see those tons and tons of vinyl records. Like, I understand. I can put myself in his shoes and I can understand like why he loves it. Honestly, I can. But for me, I never will use physical media in that. I never use CDs and vinyl. Obviously, in some sense, I'm using physical media if I'm using a hard drive, like a old, more old school hard drive, hard disk drive. But it's just, for me, it's just the lack of convenience, the lack of if I have to open things and put them in, and I can't do it. So I just have to click and get the music to play. And I love the music discovery stuff. I like everything integrated. I like everything super easy, but I totally concede that I may be losing some sonic quality doing it my way. And I'm willing to let that go just for the convenience factor. So that's just my perspective.
I had something to add here as well. I just thought about it. I grew up using cassettes and records, and for a lot of people, it might be a nostalgia as well.
Yeah.
Because I remember listening to music like Tom Waits and stuff on cassettes when I was growing up. My parents would play it, or they had different stuff on records because they still had a record player back in the 90s, and it was great. And it's not like it sounds bad. It's just digital's cleaner and more convenient too.
I remember having to change out the cassettes. I don't know, like every half hour or so, every hour, or even just changing CDs. And now I can just sit on a sofa, pick up an iPad, and I've got the world at my fingertips. That's just an amazing. It's just a huge leap, and I just can't give that up.
Oh, yeah, Rune and Volumio and all the other remote stuff's great.
It's interesting though that you say that digital is cleaner. I propose something like, if you listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which somehow has a dynamic range that includes sounds up to 90,000 hertz in their digital recordings. I find that if you had to listen to that on vinyl, reel to reel, anything like that, you'd probably end up with a cleaner sound than if you listened to it off digital on Spotify, Tidal, or even if you had downloaded the high resolution file and played it back. However you do that, off a hard drive. I would say that it's probably actually going to sound better off of a reel to reel or a vinyl system. It's going to sound cleaner.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I mean, isn't reel to reel still used a lot for analog masters anyway? I mean, that's what we get on CD and whatnot.
They reckon that's the current gold standard is reel to reel for playback.
Yeah, I mean, some people actually use that, but that's got to be the most expensive. That's like more expensive than half your gears gonna end up being.
Oh
And it's
yeah, I
the
think
servicing and stuff that goes with it being, it's a machine, you know, it's a massive machine with thousands of parts like that turns.
a reel to reel album I've seen it go for $1,500 each.
Wow, that's insane. I have a big, I have huge respect for people who go to that level, but to me it's like I just can't imagine being that deep into things. You know what I mean? But I
When you're
don't know.
retired, Smod.
maybe the payoff's worth it. I don't know. I don't know how much of that when you get to the reel to reel level, how much of it is that nostalgia versus sonic qualities, or the physical token aspect versus sonic quality. Like I want to know what that ratio is, because that's yeah, it seems to me like it even makes CDs and vinyl seem super easy and simple. Like it's just a whole different level of complexity and making things much harder.
I will be the devil's advocate and I'll say that I could see myself getting a reel to reel or maybe 2 or 3 albums in my library because I love them so much.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind messing with it, Smod, because I'm not nostalgic about reel to reel because it was in fashion and popular before I was even alive. Like I'm kind of more interested in it because like people are saying that this is like the highest fidelity way to get playback. So I wanna hear it. Like, and it's not something that they have at shows very much or anything like that. And as Ko was saying, we might not even see big shows where people bring esoteric gear, such as like, a Nagra bloody reel to reel. So I don't know. Sometimes you have to try these things out. It's just going to be you can buy older reel to reels and have them serviced without being insanely expensive, especially compared to what people are paying for, digital to analog converters now. Like I've seen the price of, we used to all scoff at Yggdrasil prices when they came out for 2,000 USD, and the amount of people that I've seen, post COVID dropping, 5 to 10,000 US on DAX. I feel like it's going up because people aren't traveling as much and,
Yeah.
are spending on their hobbies. But it's just, I think, if reel to reel can come at a couple of $1,000s to experience it, I'd love to try it. Not just from a nostalgic perspective, but just because I've heard that the playback is better than pretty much anything else.
But then would you get the albums in their original like reel to reel state or would you do analog transfers?
I would probably buy some reels. I wouldn't buy like the $1,500 ones. I'd try and buy
Yeah.
some of the smaller artists that I appreciate that probably aren't widely purchased, and then see if I can compare them to the directly digital counterparts, the CDs, and
Gotcha.
see how it compares. But yeah, I think I'd be trying to go for the because you can buy the actual original reel to reels. I think those are the really, when you buy those tapes, the original tape. But I imagine the copies of those tapes are pretty close. Probably 99%, 98% type thing of what the original is. But buying the actual master reel those are the ones you see where someone's like master reel Beatles 25,000 USD,
That's like
and it's
impossible
like,
to find.
you can't get them. And like
Yeah.
there's a market out there where people collect those and they are
Mm.
appreciating rapidly. So maybe I'll look at it as another speculative investment.
This reminds me of that video about with the Sonya XV, I think Junior, and they had a full Nagra setup, like 4 Nagra amps. They had the reel to reel and all the other kind of components. And I remember that they finished playing a song and they were queuing up the next song, and he was sitting there like rewinding it, and I'm like, I don't know, it just made me laugh. It was kind of funny, but yeah, I mean. It goes to show you that even at the seemingly highest levels of hi-fi, at least from a cost perspective, they'll still use reel to reel. So there obviously is some great respect for it.
Well, man, you go to Japan and go to any of the hi-fi shows, or sorry, hi-fi stores, or go to any of the hi-fi stores in Singapore. like I would argue that 90% of them will have a CD transport, and it'll probably be some weird like Technics or Akai or Sony that's like fully modded, but like they all run transports and stuff like that as well. So as much as
Yeah.
a lot of people go with the digital streamers and stuff, I'd say there's still definitely a huge market for CD transports.
Oh, absolutely.
Still today.
They absolutely do. I mean, they're not just in Japan, but and in Asia, but also in America. People highly value the CD players, like with like the R2R chips on them. So they just run the audio through the CD player, like as a transport or as a DAC, and then they can get that sort of like that vintage sound. And people collect these things, and then they sort of just switch them out in their system based on what mood they're in. It's really interesting.
Can anybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, Nick.
Yeah.
Hey,
Dick.
how's it going?
Oh.
I've been listening, but something wrong with my other iPad. I could not get any sound. I could only listen on YouTube, and now I'm on the Discord, and I'm here because you guys were right up my alley. Physical media all the way. I mean, yeah, okay. I call it, excuse the expression, but I call it lazy. I mean, I'm lazy lots, a whole lot. When you can sit back, have the world in the iPad, and you got any kind of music, almost every kind of music, every artist. I mean, yeah, it's easy to get laid back, but I think the higher fidelity is in the CD. Master tapes, good luck getting those because unless it's something recent that's been recorded on a master tape, getting the master tapes of some of the older music or even copies of them is, yeah, like I think it was Co was saying, investment time. And then it's like wine, you have to have the ability to store it without ruining it. But and vinyl, I don't know, I got a few hundred. I don't have the greatest turntable in the world, or but there's so much more I think it has to bring versus streaming and even CD. I'm old school, and so many people think that, oh, it's got snap crackle pop and all this. Well, that's because you're listening to a horribly kept player and some horribly kept LPs. But the true fidelity LPs and sound is pristine, and you can't tell that it's a record. I think I've told this story before. My nephew wanted to hear his favorite song, and it was a Led Zeppelin song. I forget which one it was. I said, okay, we'll start off on MP3. And then we went to streaming. Then we went to Rune and Tidal, and went to disc. And then finally I dropped the needle. And when it was all said and done, he thanked me for ruining music for him because he can't go back to listening to what he was, because the sound was just incredible. And these are his words, not mine. And I happen to agree with him, but he said you just ruined it all for me. He says, I used to be happy listening to my car, or listening.
I used to be happy.
What's that?
I was laughing. I can just imagine being like, "You ruined it! You ruined it for me. I can't go back now."
Yeah. It was like dog seeing color for the first. He's like, no. I'm done.
That's got to be one of the happiest moments, I think, as an audiophile. Is I know you've ruined something, but you've also kind of opened their eyes to our world a little bit.
Right. Right. And he was one of the ones was like, well, wait, where's the snap crackle and where's the Rice Krispies? Like, nah, you're missing it. And yeah, it was great to watch that smile just slowly build to where it hurt to watch his smile because it was hurting him, and he was so in love with what he was hearing. It was like he was having an out of body experience because it was really the first time he listened to a real setup. Outside of a Colby Coke or whatever they are, little cheapy turntables. It was the first time in my cave that he actually heard an LP the way it's supposed to be played, and he was stunned, which is super cool. And yeah, it does take effort. You do have to watch and make sure you get up and flip it over and all that. But it's part of it's ritual, part of it's experience, bringing you sometimes closer to the music because you're looking at the song, you're looking at the labeling, and you sit down and you just. I sit down in a room with some rope lights, some dim rope lights, and just get enveloped in it. And some of the jazz music, you guys, I guess it's the way you listen to digital, but it's just for me going CD or LP just brings that much more joy. That's my personal experience with it. And I have listened to master tapes, but it was years ago, and I was just shocked. I was like my nephew was, just shocked at how good it was. Do I have a desire to? I don't have the funding to go reel to reel because, I mean, it costs a lot of money to get real master tapes. You don't want a reel to reel tape of something that was recorded off an LP, or it's just second or third generation, and they're selling it as reel to reel tape. The quality is going to be gone.
Also, like adding on to your point of funding. So even for CDs, like I found this is true and doubly true for classical. So there's I recently discovered this series of albums of Bach cantatas by by a Japanese player, something Suzuki. I forget the full name. And out of morbid curiosity, I went on eBay, looked up this particular box set, and just like new, like we're talking already open, seals broken, just good condition. We're talking $735, and for the box, brand new in box set, it was like 1,300 or something. And it was already available in high res on Apple Music for free. So cost is sort of a huge issue, like for me, and also I think for everybody when it comes to physical media, because there are some great series of recordings that I'd love to have, but because they're out of print, what I've found is a lot of, especially in classical, they make these limited sets, and then they're out of print, and then you can't find them anywhere else except streaming, or you have to pay exorbitant prices for them on auction sites. So that's also another issue I found with physical media.
Yeah, I've found I have a couple of LPs that, like a lady from Empanina, that was $100 45 speed, 200-gram LP. Was it worth it? The pain at first was painful, but it really sounds good. It really does. And I have a 200-gram 45 speed, kind of blue. Yeah, it was expensive, and it was done by a reputable company, and it really, I've listened to it streaming and on a cheaper LP, and it just, the heavy weight and the double speed, it all adds into just better sound, in my opinion. All this, of course, all of these things are in our personal opinions, which some people think, you'll see it on the Discord a lot. Well, this is the best one, and this is the way it is, period. And then, the smoke starts to rise because there's a war on the Discord because, well, no, the 1975 recording was better and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, guys, don't forget, it's always in our opinion, and just leave it at that. Right?
Interesting discussion, definitely. So the next topic is about classical music. Why don't you? It's an interesting topic. Why don't you listen to more classical music? So
quick thing.
Oh yeah.
Just to kick off the topic. So if you haven't heard, Apple purchased Primephonic, which is a classical streaming service, and Apple has announced that they will come out with their own dedicated app just for classical music next year in 2022. So, and that will be lossless, of course. So this is great because we're looking into, I think, audiophile sort of hi-fi is moving into the mainstream, and classical is sort of when someone asks you what is an audiophile, you think of some old fart with like a MBL system listening to classical violins, twirling his mustache with a Mercedes in his garage. And really that's what and you know what, really I'm quite happy that Apple did this, because now I would like to now. I think we may see some stuff from other streaming services making more of an aggressive push into these services. But yeah, I guess kicking off into your thing about classical music, yeah, it's a love and a hate, because Novusnek made a really good point about the quality varies from album to album, publisher to publisher, and you're not going to be guaranteed that what you're going to get, even like if you get a Mozart symphony, it's published by, let's say, there's multiple albums doing the same thing with different labels, and they're all at varying qualities. And then you have to get into, how was it published? Was it on SACD? Was it on vinyl? Was it did you buy it digitally? What was how did you get it? And then that audio quality will then differ based on the format as well. So it's a bit of a love. It's a curse in a way, because you got so many choices and you're burdened by choice. The pro is that because a lot of the classical music industry, you get a lot of like, if you get one recording, you can get like a bunch of different versions of one recording. So you get a lot of choices. The other downside, or another point to it, would be that if you find a good label, for instance for me, Sony Classical or Gramophone, those are sort of the really good ones. And the downside to that is that if they have a limited pressing or limited release of a certain box set, and you find it, and let's say the box set was out of print as of, let's say, 5 years ago, you and everybody else is going to want it. So you go on eBay and it's like $1,000. So that's the downside. What else? Yeah, I mean, I will say this, devil's advocate here. I do love digital for classical, especially because then you can discover which label and which version of the music you like, and then from there you can, if you really want to, you can then go and get the physical version of it if they have it in print. But what I've found is that I do have some classical music in physical, but because of convenience, I found that Apple Music can do better recommendations, and I've discovered organically through Apple Music recommendations really, really good classical music. And so it sort of becomes a battle. Which one do I go in Roon? Do I go in Apple Music? And yeah, that's sort of a fun dynamic there. Does anyone have any thoughts on classical music?
I suppose a couple. I mean, every time I try to get into it, I mean, I either start listening to an album of classical music and I love it, or I hate it and I think it might be down to the mood I'm in, because it's not very, it's not always the most dynamic or exciting, but it can also just be full of a lot of I don't know what the word to use here, just a lot of different instruments, I suppose. A lot of sounds and soundscapes you don't necessarily hear all the time, and knowing that none of it's really a synth is pretty cool. It's nice to know that it's all real instruments, and you can usually hear that it's a real instrument.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think another thing which is nice is that depending on what type of classical music you listen to, you can discover really great like soloists or great performers. So so for instance, if you listen to, let's say, a symphony and it features this artist or this artist, then you say, oh, okay, look at this artist, and then this artist has their own discography behind them. So it sort of becomes this lovely little journey, discovering these multiple artists within artists, and then let's say from an orchestra, you can then develop an attachment to a certain instrument, and then you can sort of go within that. Then you can find recordings within that. That was recording that was based on a piece of music that was written in a certain period, and then you could sort of go back by period listening, which is a lot of fun too. So when I started classical music, listening to it, I started with Chopin, because that's sort of what I gravitate to, and then I moved from there, and I started with Chopin piano concertos, and then from there I moved into Mozart violin, and now I'm into Mozart grand symphonies with violins, like violin sonatas and that sort of thing. And it's a lot of fun because it's a great way to benchmark and test your gear, because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of layering, a lot of instrumentation, a lot of atmospheric. You can really do interesting. You can analyze the imaging of a certain gear really well. That being said, if you have a particular chain that's optimized for classical, what I've found is that it doesn't translate too well to other genres. So when I did some audio auditions, equipment auditions for speakers last year, I found that some chains which did really well with jazz, like ATC, for instance, didn't perform as well with classical compared to, let's say, Focal. But when I played jazz and Focal speakers with and I think it was a Evo something, I think it was Evo Utopia, and played jazz on it, didn't sound right, didn't have that warmth, didn't have that intimacy or that punch. But when I played classical on it, it was so expansive, and the detail and the layering was just phenomenal. So classical can sort of pick apart your gear, and then you sort of may be compelled to buy gear which excels with that genre. It's a pro and con. It really depends. I mean, not a lot of people. I mean, what I've found is that classical is really a preference thing. But if you get into it, get ready to spend a lot.
Man, I've noticed jazz will pick apart your setup too, but
Oh yeah.
classical.
But I mean, like with
classical, I've never been too sure if it's just the gear or just my taste.
could be a taste thing. I mean, with jazz, like you're never going to get a jazz orchestra like that. I've never come across that. So you don't really need a tremendous soundstage. But with the classical, you sort of need it. Otherwise, it will sound mushy or will sound compressed. They just won't be there. It just won't sound right. But with jazz, if you do have like with saxophone solos, yeah, that can be brutal. That can be really brutal in your gear if you don't have the right stuff, particularly in the mid range and the bass. But treble, I wonder. But yeah, I think I've talked long enough. Anyone have any thoughts on classical?
Yeah, I really love classical. I enjoy Baroque era classical and flute and harpsichord, concertos and music. I really enjoy classical. One thing with me though is I find it I think Ko, I think you mentioned this or maybe Silverish about the quality. It tends to not. It tends to be harder to find like really well mastered classical pieces compared to kind of jazz or kind of more audiophile kind of focused music. So that is one issue because you're listening to like let's say some kind of jazz album and it sounds so good and so three-dimensional and soundstage and all that kind of thing, and then you go to a classical track and you're like whoa, and it's like way flatter, and you can tell it's just the nature of the mastering and the recording. So that's one issue. But then the other issue I find, which I don't know, I've never heard other people kind of talk about this, is sometimes I find classical actually a bit fatiguing in the sense that I think it's just very complex music and there's a lot of instruments, but they can be very complex, orchestra, that kind of thing. And I just find I get this fatigue, like brain fatigue, not like because it's too bright or anything, but I just have to, like, I can't just sit and relax and listen to it for hours and hours the same way I can listen to ambient for hours, jazz, instrumental music, like stuff like that. So I don't know, and maybe that's more so like if I listen to some classical that's small ensembles or solo classical and solo piano, then I think I'm okay. But with big kind of orchestral kind of music, it's just too complex for my brain. I don't know what it is, but I still enjoy it. But I enjoy it in smaller quantities. That's all, smaller doses.
Could it be? And I can relate to what you're saying because sometimes I'll be listening to some and it's really good, and then it'll change songs, and you're like, okay, well, come on, get on with it. You're like, let's get there already, and they're building and they're building and they're going in, and it's like it does. Okay, this part's not interesting me. I want to get to the next because just get there already. I've come across quite a bit that's like that. I have a problem with classical, and I enjoy a lots of it, and then there's a lot I just don't care for because it just it takes a lot of effort to find what you like because there is so much of it. I really do enjoy pipe organ so much, and you want to have to need gear. You better bring out some big subs to get down low and just. But
Oh,
yeah,
subs are fantastic with organ music. I love that.
yeah, and tubes on top of that. You can get some Baldwin tubes that are just a little bit more, but that's another discussion all in itself. But as far as classical, I'll come across something and play it, and I'm like, yeah, this is what it is, and then I'll come across another. When you're searching, usually they'll announce who it is in the beginning, then they'll play it, and it's like, okay, that was good. Who was it? Damn, I forgot. I'm old. I forget stuff, and you're like, okay, I'll listen for it next time. Because that's and okay. I'm not so familiar that I'll know the conductor to or the writer of the music to be able to search and find it. So for me, classical is pretty hit and miss because I'd rather do jazz. Big band to me, if you want, is hands down. I'll take my big band music over most classical any time of the week. Just because, and it's big bands, it's big groups of people playing a vast variety of instruments. It's just a different type of music. You can get 40, 50 guys and gals playing music in a big band. And same with an orchestra. It's just different tones and different, just different music completely. But I enjoy some classical, but not tons of it. I tire of it easily, I guess you can say. That's my wrap on classical.
All right, sounds good. Okay, we're kind of nearing the end in terms of our time, so I'm just gonna end it with this final topic and or final kind of segment, and that's Co's Corner, where our esteemed guest Co will kind of discuss IEMs and portable audio, and of course, others feel free to jump in or ask questions, that kind of thing. So Co, tell us about the world of portable audio and IEMs.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, sorry to say, there's not a lot much happening this week in the world of IEMs. There is, I mean, there's the Empire Evo. So if you guys don't know, Empire Legend Evo is a IEM by Empire Ears, which is set to be announced for pre-orders this week. Hasn't happened yet, so sort of waiting on that. But there has been some early impressions on that IEM. So if you just go on the Empire Ears thread on HeadFi, you should see it. It's probably the most hyped IEM on HeadFi right now, and probably in the IEM community, at least in America. So that, which is interesting because in the Asian IEM community, a lot of folks are sort of waiting for the unique melody mentor fable sound, because that is a bit more reflective of Asian tastes, which is a little bit less on the subwoofers, a little bit less on that club bass, and more on a slightly more. It is dynamic, but a more balanced listen. So it's funny just to see that those opposing preferences reflected in the hype for these IEMs. I guess personally, for what's going on with me is sort of the calm before the storm. I think I mentioned I got 2 IEMs coming in next week. So I got the Elysian X, which is by a company. It's a one-man band. It's a one-man show, run by one guy, Mr. Lee, and I'll be getting it after 2 months, a little over 2 months. So I'm very happy to get that in my hands. I did get a customization on the faceplate, which is quite good. It's more of a subtle look. And this is supposed to be replacing the Aureolus Tralee. For you guys who don't know, Aureolus Tralee is one of the most hyped and respected IEMs on HeadFi and in the wider IEM community. It's also one of the most expensive, coming in at 6,600 MSRP. And the Elysian X is sort of the underdog, I view it. It is less expensive, of course, but again, it's by a one-man band. Just one guy. He's doing everything. And it's gotten some high praise from Precog Vision and Clinical, which is interesting because I don't know about Precog, but I know that Crin wasn't all that impressed with Tralee, and BGGAR Bad Guy, or Hawaii Bad Boy as well, wasn't all that impressed with Tralee either, but they both loved Elysian X. So that'll be quite interesting. What else is happening? Oh yeah, right, the Melee. So the Melee, if you guys who aren't who may not have the budget for $4,000 plus IEMs, the Hawaii Bad Boy worked with TripleWin, Chinese IEM maker, to come to introduce the Melee, which is in his terms, it's supposed to be the successor to the Blonde 03. And the Blonde 03 is sort of I guess the favorite for budget IEMs on HeadFi, and then probably in the wider IEM community too. Everyone loves the tuning of it, and the Melee is a bad boy's take on what the ultimate budget IEM should be under $150, and it comes in at $50. And I think he sold out the first wave, and mine should be coming in. It touched down from China yesterday, so it should be coming in either late this week or next week. But yeah, next week should be fun because I'll be getting what should be one of the best budget IEMs on the market, which is the Melee, and then I should also be getting one of the best Summit tier IEMs, which is the Elysian X. So two opposing the best of different tiers in the price point. Anything else? Let me see. I'm trying to think here. There's nothing else I could say because NDA stuff. I'd be nice not to share. But I think apart from that, yeah. I mean, also next year, the theme for next year, if you guys are interested in DApps or digital audio players, the theme is going to be R2R. So you're going to see a lot of new R2R players hit the market late this year and early next year. I think the AKM fire motivated this and sort of hastened the change a bit more quickly, because I think Shit Audio did a great article on the hassle of switching from ESS Sabre, switching from AKM to ESS Sabre. And this sort of switch is expensive because you have to do your own R&D and to make sure your circuit works well with the ESS chips. So a lot of DApp makers have sort of said, you know what, this is the time we're going to try and do R2R and bring that to the mainstream. And so, yeah, there's will be a lot of interesting things next year. You got a lot of new flagships coming out next year. You got new R2R players. It'll be the year of R2R. Yeah, that should be fun. That's about it.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I suppose by R2R you mean chips, not discrete, because I don't imagine a DApp can really fit a ladder.
Well, they do have discrete R2R. Luxury and Precision has. So I owned a DApp called the Luxury and Precision P6 Pro. That is a full discrete resistor ladder DAC. It does have dual ladders, so it does exist, and I'm not sure of any others that are out there on the market. Our Hibi RS6 is supposed to be another R2R which is coming out. I am not completely familiar with what they do, but I think it may be integrated, but I'm not sure. It's basically the higher end stuff is going to be integrated circuit R2R. And for Luxury and Precision, which is like one of the most known or one of the more pioneers of R2R DApps, for the higher end products, they do, as you mentioned, integrated circuit R2R. So on the actual chip, on the chip itself. And they got new players coming out. They should be announced in January. I think he's making the engineered prototypes. We're in September, right? Yeah. So he's making the engineered prototypes in October, and I may be able to get them in for evaluation. So that should be fun.
Awesome. That's thanks for the insight into the IEM community. You're the portable world. You're the main expert of that, so appreciate that. The only question I have is, and I know it's not a fair question, and I know it's apples and oranges, but is the Verite closed better than all your IEMs?
Well, I've mentioned this a few times, and I will stand by it, that my Mason Fable sound is my very favorite piece of gear, and it surpasses any headphone I own. And it comes down to the bone conduction. So based on my experience, you bone conduction outclasses air conduction, because bone conduction gives you that physicality that speakers give you. And speakers, obviously, in my opinion, outclass everything else, because it gives you that, you get that full hit of the sound wave, and it goes through your chest, and it goes through the floor, and it travels up your body. It's amazing. Yeah. But with the bone conduction, and Empire Ears with the Evo, they put bone conduction in there as well. And I do believe that, again, next year you got R2R players, you're also going to get a lot more bone conduction sets. The key with bone conduction is that it's been around for a while, the technology, but the implementation is really, really tricky. And Unique Melody filed a few patents on how to on their own specific implementation. Empire Ears has implemented their own type of it, and I'm just really curious to see how other companies are going to approach it, because it's getting it's going to be interesting to see how they do it without infringing on all these companies, patents. But yeah, you asked about it, and I will say that bone conduction IEMs will always, I think, have the upper hand over air conduction headphones, because you can feel what you're listening to, and for me, that's a big, big deal. It goes from it's like it goes from listening to your violin to feeling like I'm playing the violin. That's a huge, huge deal.
Nice. Well, if I ever get a chance to hear it, that would be awesome. I'll see if I can somehow audition it. But yeah, and maybe that technology will trickle down into kind of less expensive devices as well. And I don't know, is it possible to even do that in headphones, the bone conduction?
I mean, it should be. I mean, I don't think there's any reason it shouldn't be. I mean, the downside with with IEMs like Fable Sound is that they're very genre specific. So you can't like, I've tried electronic on it. I've tried classical orchestra. It doesn't work. You need something which is you need more intimate recordings, then it works. I don't know how Empire Evo is going to do it. I'm really curious. A lot of my audio buddies are planning on pre-ordering it the minute they drop. However, I'm going to hold off on it for a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Ko, and thanks to everybody. It's been an awesome episode. Look forward to episode 7. There was just one extra topic. I'm going to leave that for episode 7 because we've kind of gone over time here. And I really appreciate it. Nick, Silverish, Zek. Zek kind of dropped out, but I really appreciate your time, guys. Yeah, any final thoughts, Nick, Silverish, Ko? Any final thoughts?
Just stay tuned for next week. I got some really cool gear coming in next week, so that's it.
Nice. Okay. Sounds good. All right, guys. So that'll do it. And tune in. Should be next week. We usually do this once a week. Sonic Visions podcast, episode 7. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're now doing live streams. Sign up for a forum. Join our Discord. And enjoy the music. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Cheers.